Welcome, good evening. The recording is now also with us. So everyone, welcome this evening to today's talk by the Center for the Study of Social and Global Justice. My name is Andreas Bieler, and it's my pleasure to chair this evening's session. Before I introduce our speaker, however, I just want to remind everyone that the Center for the Study of Social and Global Justice, or in short, CSSGJ, has now gone fully independent from university administrations. It does allow us to be freer in our selection of topics. It gives us more space, intellectual, academic freedom-wise. But of course, it also comes with cost. And we therefore have also got now a membership option. And after the introduction, I will put the relevant details into the chat for whoever would like to become a member of the center. Being a member of the center then also provides everyone with the opportunity to co-decide on the direction of the center. So CSSGJ is now independent, and perhaps one or the other is interested in joining us. However, without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Martina Locorotondo to this evening's seminar. She's going to speak on slightly amended version of the title, Genesis and Expansion of the Commons in Naples, from Water to Real Estate to the City as Commons. Now, Martina is moving towards the very end of her PhD studies at the Montfort University in Leicester, United Kingdom. She has already also done teaching at the university, but it's not just the academic background she is coming from, but she has actually also been an activist in the Naples Commons since 2020. And so in a way, this talk fits very nicely into the general profile of CSSGJ, where we try to, of course, have critical political economy, critical academic presentations, but equally, we also want to hear from practitioners, from activists in the field. And in a way, Martina combines those two attributes, being an activist as well as an academic, reflecting on their activism. And so it's really my pleasure to welcome you this evening, Martina. In our usual manner, you will have 35 to 40 minutes for your presentation. And then we will have roughly a similar amount of time for questions, discussions, and answers. Martina, over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and many thanks, Andreas, for having invited me to present my work. Well, I am going to share today one part of my PhD research, of which I'm going to give you a very brief overview. Well, so my research in general lies at the intersection between critical urban studies, decolonial feminist geographies, social movement studies, and the commons. It is focused on the case of Naples in Italy. The city has been invested by two opposite urban phenomena during the last decade. One is touristification or over-tourism in the city center. The other one is the proliferation of the commons and new-municipalist experience. So I have been investigating the production of the freed urban space by the commons in the tourist city using an ethnographic method focused and embedded in the everyday life in the everyday practices of the commons. Why this research interest? Well, I am from Naples and I have lived abroad for a while. And when I used to go back home during the weekends or for Christmas, I could see in the last 5 years my city changing a lot, very rapidly, but also very dramatically. I could see inhabitants being displaced by bed and breakfast. I could see all shops closing down to give way to pizzerias, and the young people losing the public spaces of the squares and the streets to meet, to play, to socialize. So I wanted to understand what was going on, but also to contribute to those grassroots experiences that were trying to resist these processes, but also to that were also trying to elaborate alternatives to this city model. Today, I will look at the genesis and expansion of the commons in Naples. The talk will be divided in 4 sections. First, I will provide some definitions from the theory on commons, commoning, enclosures, and new municipalism. Then I will give you a brief overview of the urban context from which the commons in Naples have developed, and then the main part of the talk will be dedicated to the negotiation of the new municipalist experience between the commons and the local state. Fourth, I will elaborate on the evolution of the commons in Naples from water to the real estate, and I will wonder whether the commons have been extended to the city as a whole. Let's start with some definitions. The commons have been defined by Eleanor Ostrom as resources in common that are being managed collectively by communities of people through self-government, and so without the intervention of either the state or the market. After Eleanor Ostrom, a large literature expanded the concept and tried to politicize the commons, highlighting the possibilities of overcoming neoliberalism. For example, here Silvia Federici says that the reappropriation of commonwealth and disaccumulation of capital could be achieved through deprivatization of land, water, and urban spaces, and the creation of forms of reproduction built on self-management, collective labor, and collective decision-making. De Angelis defines the commons as composed by 3 main elements: commonwealth, which are the resources in common, a community of commoners, and the ongoing interaction phases of decision-making and communal labor processes that together are called commoning. Well, when and where the commons were born, the commons have a long history prior to capitalism. We should mention the Native American commons who have used the lands in common for centuries, taking from it just enough in order to ensure their living, but ensuring the reproduction of the resource for future generations. In Europe, there is the example of the uticives, the civic uses that are known since medieval time, that consist in the use of the land for collecting wood, sowing by the community of people that inhabited a certain territory. Both the examples underwent processes of enclosures. With this term initially, the term initially identified the fencing off of the common lands in England especially from the 16th century onwards, at the expenses of the peasants' use and for the accumulation of the gentry. Then the term was also extended to the urban context, and that's why urban studies literature uses the term gentrification also to refer to the dispossession of parts of the public space and private space in favor of the gentry, in reference with the gentry. Then the concept of the commons also underwent a new success in the last 15 years, both worldwide but also in Italy. In Italy, initially, it was associated from the grassroots side to the struggles for water as a commons and for the environmental struggles. At the institutional level, we should mention the 2008 Commission Rodotà. At the moment, in Naples, the commons, we use the term commons to refer not anymore to the natural resources in common, but to refer to occupied free spaces that have been liberated by a history of neglect, abandonment, and that have been housed to a multiplicity of projects of solidarity and cultural and political activities, but where also communities have experimented self-government practices. In Naples, the word commons is often associated with new municipalism, new municipalist experience, because these two stories are quite intertwined in the case of Naples in the time span 2011-2021, as I will show in a bit. For whom is not familiar with the term, new municipalism is defined. With new municipalism, I refer to a series of experiments conducted in Europe, but not only, over the last decade, where local government coalitions have tried to bring politics back to the level of the local, in contrast to neoliberal austerity, and have tried to re-municipalize services that were outsourced before, have experimented with practices of radical or participatory democracy, have negotiated with the social movements and civil society. Let's now start to analyze the context of Naples, the urban context from which the experience of the commons was born. The experience was born in an urban scenario characterized by chronic and growing inequalities. First, we should mention the Southern question, which is a story of economic disparity between the north and the south of Italy, which has been fostered by the national state. Then we should mention the huge debt that has the city of Naples, which has been mainly produced by commissariats by the state, the use of derivative financial contracts by local governments, and by the high interest rates on the loans provided by Cassa Depositi e Prestiti. This situation aggravated with the austerity policies, in particular with the introduction of the balanced budget law in 2012, which resulted in a reduction in the spending power of the municipality, for example, for the implementation of social policy, and also resulted in the alienation of municipal real estate. The central neighborhoods of Naples, which are those in which some of the experiences of the commons have developed, and which are also the same neighborhoods of touristification today, are, in contrast to the other European cities, are the poorest ones, together with those in the suburbs, with around 12,000 euros average income per capita, and present high indicators of socioeconomic deprivation and unemployment. This central area of Naples, also defined as Valley of Naples, has underwent multiple attempts at restructuring and rehabilitation, entailing the displacement of the popular classes. The urban phenomenon that is observable today is an over-tourism in the city center, which is further worsening these social inequalities. The same urban context, which, as I said, was characterized by a story of neglect, is also characterized by a story of popular resistance and grassroots politics by the social movements fighting for a fairer society. It is especially on the back of the wave of struggles happening after the financial crisis after 2008 that the experience of the commons developed. We should mention, for example, the struggles for water as a common good, the struggles on environmental justice and against the incinerators in the Campania regions, but also the struggles for the decontamination of the Exit-Alciter area in Bagnoli. Also, we should mention the student movements and the claims of the art workers. I also should highlight that in this period, the word commons was encompassed the struggles for water and one against the incinerators in Naples, but it was not used for occupied free spaces yet. Instead, this is going to happen between 2012 and 2015. In this time span, the current spaces were freed, freed spaces or commons, and all of them are public-owned buildings owned by the municipality or the central state, which were before in a state of abandonment, disuse, or they were privately used, as it was in the case of l'asilo, l'ex-asilo Filangieri, because it used to be, at the time of the occupation, the headquarters of a private law foundation called Foundation Forum of Culture, which was a big cultural event quite detached from the territory. While l'asilo then has developed as a commons, meaning that you can find, artists can find in l'asilo shared means of production, and the space is managed collectively by by an open community. Another example is Scugnizzo Liberato, which before used to be a juvenile prison, abandoned for 15 years after its closure. And before it was occupied, it was included in a public-private project of an art district. Today, instead, the space hosts a multiplicity of solidarity, cultural and political activities, from space for popular sport courses to space for artisans who are displaced by gentrification, spaces for the migrant communities to meet and celebrate, and many other activities. And similar experiences and similar stories also have the other commons who, before being occupied, were abandoned or were going to be sold to repay debt, as in the case of Villa Medusa. And now let's look at the local government side of the negotiation of the new municipalist experience. This experience happened of new municipalism during the 2 terms in office of an administration led by Luigi De Magistris. The administration, before entering in negotiation with the commons, already showed an interest in the theme of the commons, in particular with 2 acts. The first one was the remunicipalization of the service for water provision, as in response to the forum the International Forum for Water, and also the amendment of the municipal statute in order to introduce a 3rd category of following the Rodotà Commission, to introduce a 3rd category of goods, which are neither public or private and are of course the commons, and in order to develop an advancement of law basing on the existence of this 3rd category. There is probably something that I wanted to highlight in relation to the first resolution on water, that already it includes an idea of the commons as fundamentally opposed to the free market economy, because water is defined as a universal human right not subject to market mechanisms. And in relation to the second resolution, I should highlight that the commons are recognized as goods of widespread ownership, of which the state must guarantee the collective use to the inhabitants. Then l'asilo represents the ring of the chain that has extended the practice and the theory of the commons in Naples from natural resources, in particular water, to real estate, and in particular to a freed occupied space. Since the very beginning of the existence of l'asilo, soon after the occupation, the activists and the local administration initiated a negotiation and a juridical experimentation that was conducted four-handedly between these 2 actors. A first resolution was obtained 3 months after the occupation, recognizing l'asilo as a commons, And it's interesting to note that with this act, the municipality stays in continuity and not in contrast to the conflictual act initiated by the occupiers, which is also what allowed an innovative juridical experimentation to be developed. However, the first resolution was just a first step, but then the main resolution was obtained in 3 years after. So after a long juridical experimentation conducted between the activists and the councillors that recognized the civic use of the space, referring to the uticives that I mentioned before, so the common use of the land. But here it is done in an urban context and in relation to a building owned by the municipality. And as part of this resolution, the municipality also acquired a declaration of civic and collective use that was written by the activists and included the rules for access and use of the space through self-government and in the informality of the process. Indeed, it is an important innovative aspect to highlight is that the resolution recognizes the autonomy of the community to self-govern itself, the informality of the process, meaning that the community was not recognized in an official body with roles and responsible people. And third, it also recognized the non-fixity of the process, meaning that the community can change the declaration of civic and collective use according to the changing needs coming from the territory. Soon after, we are now in 2015-2016, the experience of Massa Critica developed. Massa Critica used to be a platform for discussion which pulled together citizens' movement to take a voice in how cities should be governed. We are in the cultural climate of new municipalism, and it is in this context that alliances were created in order to extend the resolution of l'asilo to other 7 commons or freed spaces. There are a couple of things to mention in this resolution. One is that it's important the use of the verb recognize rather than create. I mean that it's important that the resolution recognizes some processes that were already happening, some practices already happening that have somehow anticipated the law. So it's not the law that creates the freed spaces, but the practices have anticipated the recognition, the official recognition. And a second one is that, as it is written in a public statement by the Commons, that a fundamental premise for this to happen was that councillors have accepted the autonomy of the spaces. Massa Critica also gave birth to new popular institutions. the Observatory of the Commons and the Audit on Debt, which were composed both by activists and not only experts elected by the mayor. Here, probably we see an attempt to extend the commons from free spaces to urban politics. The first one is a consultative body on in relation to the policies on the theme of the commons, while the second one deals with the issue of debt. Its objective was to study and to give citizens the tools to understand the condition of debt in Naples, but also to politicize the condition of debt to show the political choices that determined the prioritization of debt repayment and the privatization of public assets, while showing other possibilities to overcome the crisis. Then we move now to the last part that is also the last shift, so from real estate to the city as a commons. And I will also elaborate on the limit of this last shift. This is observable in two resolutions. One is issued in 2013, the other one in 2017, where the municipality declares the intention to bring the value of the civic use into urban planning disciplines. Here, the civic uses are conceived as strongholds for safeguarding the territory, subtracting land from building, alienation, and privatization. However, if one part of the administration tried to respond to the request for the right to the city, we see here that in the same period, in March 2017, the municipality also issued a territorial marketing plan together with the JSAC International Airport of Naples, called Destination Naples 2020, which was a plan aimed at boosting tourism by creating a brand of Naples around the concept of authenticity. And of course, this neoliberal urban practice is an open contradiction with the politics of the commons and the city as a commons. In November 2017, activists from the commons and from the movement against touristification, the SET network, went to the town hall in order to criticize this marketing plan and to show data on the housing emergency produced by this phenomenon and to ask for a regulation of the phenomenon. However, their demands went unheeded. Today, the result of this unregulated touristification is that it is threatening, on the one hand, some crucial commons such as the right to housing and to public space, but it is also undermining the very possibility for the commons to reproduce themselves, because of course their existence based on the everyday care given by inhabitants. And so we wonder who will take care of the commons if the inhabitants are being displaced by touristification. I am going now to some conclusions. First of all, I have shown the expansive nature of the commons in Naples, from natural resources, especially water, but also struggles against incinerators and for the decontamination of Bagnoli ex-Italsider area, to the real estate, so the commons as a way to manage the real estate of the municipality, and then there is this last shift from the real estate to the city, to the city as a commons. However, for what concerns this last shift, I have shown the contradictory coexistence of new municipalism and unregulated touristification in the same time span, and the difficulty of expanding this politics to the whole city. The main contradiction is that on the one hand, new municipalism promoted the public city against private management and alienation, promoted the right to use the space and the participation of the inhabitants. On the other hand, the advance of tourism was not regulated by the state, and it is threatening precisely the free use of public space and participation of the inhabitants because they are being displaced. So my conclusion is that the commons should be considered always and practically and conceptually as expansive, otherwise they risk being enclosed themselves by the expansive nature of neoliberal urban processes. And so the tension between enclosures and commons that is at the origins of the commons should be always kept open. In particular, the case of Naples suggests the crucial need for a regulation of short-term rentals in order to limit the spread of bed and breakfasts as they are taking away homes from the inhabitants. And indeed, the permanence of the inhabitants is a crucial premise for the existence of any commons, meant both as natural resources and also as free spaces. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Martina, for that well-timed, extremely interesting and to-the-point presentation.